You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to jump right into it. We want to talk about round one, where we're at as of right now. Got a few things to talk about, so let's get right into it. Brian, what's up?
Not much. I watched a couple of these games over the last few days. Admittedly, this week I didn't watch as much hockey as I did on opening weekend. I kind of burnt myself out a little bit.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
That's okay. You're right though. Let's jump right at it. Let's go out west. We'll start with the Stars and Golden Knights. Dallas wins last night, gets himself back in the series. 2 goals from Wyatt Johnson, including the overtime winner. Pretty good game on both ends of the ice from the goaltending. I thought Logan Thompson was great, but just fell victim to the numbers game. I mean, he faced so many shots. Eventually, one of them's going to go in especially when you're playing a team like Dallas. Ottinger, for the most part, was pretty good. I wasn't crazy about the fact that both goals beat him high blocker. I mean, they were very similar shots. But ultimately for Dallas, the most important thing is they won and they're back in the series. And now it more feels now like it could be anyone's series. Whereas if this would have gone 3-0 in Vegas's favor, I think we all could have probably put the rest of the pieces together.
Yeah, well said. I think obviously Dallas picking up a win in Vegas is huge.
Yeah.
It's critical, especially when you're playing a team as good as Vegas and you know how dangerous playing in Vegas can be. I think if Dallas can pick up the next game, we got ourselves a good series ahead of us. I mean, that would potentially be able to go 7 games. So
easily.
Again, good on Dallas picking that up. I'm excited to see where it goes from here. I don't have a dog in the fight for this series, so whoever comes out on top is fine with me. I don't really care. I'm just excited to watch it.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on next, we have the Jets and the Avalanche. This series has probably gone opposite of what most people would have expected. This is Alexander Georgiev finding another gear. After game 1, he's been really, really good for a result for the Avalanche. And I mean, I know they're a good home team, but they come home, they have a fantastic game, they get the win, and now they're leading the series. And they play again this afternoon. I mean, this tide could turn so fast on the Jets, who just can't seem to get it going now.
Yeah, I've talked about this in the last day or so. Just what the hell's happened to Connor Hellebuck, man? This is not what anybody was expecting to see out of him, and that includes the Colorado Avalanche. I expected this whole series to go heavily in Winnipeg's favor, especially when you consider that on the other end of the ice, you have Georgiev, who we all know. I don't want to beat a dead horse with him. But, I mean, if you can get Connor Hellebuck to play like he did in the regular season, you've got a good shot at walking away with this series. And now they're in oh shit territory where if they can't pick one up in Colorado, they're pretty much doomed.
Yeah, you could pretty well stick a fork in them.
Yeah.
Let's see here. My only other concern with the Jets, too, is Connor Hellebuck. Last year in the playoffs, 886 save percentage, and the Jets were out in 5. This year in the playoffs, an 871, and they're dangerously close to following the same path this year. For a goalie who in the past in the playoffs and as always in the regular season is really good, it's kind of unsettling to see Connor Hellebuck have so much trouble beating a team like Colorado.
Yeah, I think everybody's surprised by it ultimately. And I've seen comments on Facebook that say, oh, well, he's just not a playoff goaltender. Well, he's had success in the playoffs. So
he took them to the conference finals his
Exactly.
first year. I was almost certain that was his first full year as their goalie or his second full year, one of the two.
Yeah, so to say he's not a playoff goalie is not accurate at all. He's just something between last year and this year. Something ain't right. And I don't know if it's a Connor Hellebuck thing. I don't know if it's a locker room atmosphere type of thing. I don't know what's going on. But if you want to come away with this series, Winnipeg has got to get it together. And it starts with Connor Hellebuck.
For what it's worth, since the Jets made the conference final in 2018, I don't believe they have won a playoff series. Looking at Hellebuck's record, 18-19, they were out in 6. 19-20, they were out. He played 4 games and lost 3 of them. I assume they were out in 5, and that he was just not the goalie of record for the other one because he had a win. But 2020 to 2021, 4 wins, 4 losses. I assume he came in relief somewhere. I don't think the Jets won around that year. I'd have to double check, but then last year they were out in 5, and again this year they're on a dangerously close path.
My only thought on why he's playing the way he is, and we won't know about this unless he goes out for good or until the Jets run in the playoffs is over, is he playing injured right now and we just don't know about it? That's really the only thing I can think of. Or is he just having a bad go?
Let's see. Okay, here we go. So I had to look this up because it was driving me nuts. The Jets swept the Oilers in 2021 in the playoffs and then got swept by the Habs in the second round. Okay, so that's why he's 4-4. Okay. So yeah, that's not a great. So they have won one round, but it was in that goofy all Canadian playoff division. Yeah, that was those 2 years for the playoffs were just so strange. The bubble, and then in 2021, it was just weird. But yeah, so largely for Connor Hellebuyck, limited postseason success, and the Jets, obviously that goes hand in hand. You may be right about the injury. The only thing is he really doesn't show signs of it, other than the fact that he's letting in a lot of goals. He doesn't really look uncomfortable. You know, with goalies, it's usually easy to tell when they're playing with some kind of ailment because they have to, you know, be so flexible. When they're having trouble, you can usually see it. It doesn't really look like it, and I know part of it is that the Jets are just getting beat up and down the ice, but it's just strange to see the Jets in this position.
Well, and you know, we've talked about this throughout the year for whoever ended up having to play Colorado. If you can't stop their offense, you're in trouble, because that's a team that all season was able to outscore all of their goaltending issues, which they had a lot of. So all we can hope for is that Hellebuyck figures out and turns it around, that he's not injured, and see where it goes from there. But the way things look right now, I don't have high hopes.
All right. Speaking of another team with probably not having high hopes, we'll go over to Vancouver and Nashville. Nashville comes out the other night, home ice, only allowing 12 shots on goal. Unfortunately, it's not enough to get them a win. 2-1 loss in regulation to the Canucks. I wasn't crazy about the officiating in this game, but ultimately they allowed 12 shots and 2 of them went in. I know they were both on the power play, but couple things from that game. I didn't like Jeremy Lauzon's game. I thought he was the guilty party in both of the goals against. He really kind of blew his coverage on both of them, especially the second goal. And so now if you're the Preds, you're playing in what's been a very low shot quantity series. I mean, both teams have been not really generating a ton of offense. You got to go out and get a win here, man. You know, the Canucks are ailing right now without Demko. You have to jump all over this. They went out the other night and made Casey DeSmith look like an elite goalie. They really didn't have to challenge him much. So they got quite a few shots to the net, but nothing that DeSmith really couldn't turn away. And that's ultimately why they lost. So for the Preds, I'm looking for them to come out of the gates flying in game 4 tonight. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, as someone, you know, I don't want to make this sound biased, because I am rooting for Nashville in that series. I do legitimately like Nashville, but Vancouver's got Thatcher Demko out right now. I mean, they're pretty much holding up a big giant neon sign that says, "Hey, kick our ass." You've got to capitalize, especially when your own barn. And you talked about it earlier too. It was silent in Nashville, and it kind of makes us look kind of stupid, because all we talk about when we talk about Nashville is how electric and loud that barn is. And it was honestly,
the Canucks did a good job keeping it quiet. That was such a hush game. I'm also kind of concerned with Andrew Burnett's coaching style, and I'm starting to wonder if this is why the Panthers didn't keep him as their head coach after that run they had. Because, man, does it look like he's getting out-coached out there. Now, to Rick Tocchet's credit, he's a fantastic coach. So Vancouver is already a really well-coached team, but yes, Burnett just looks like he's a step behind. His matchups don't seem like they're very effective. I mean, on home ice, I figured even if they don't win, they'll come out and they'll have some really good looks because they're on home ice. They really only had a couple chances where I was like, oh, shit, that could have gone in. And I just was like, and again, they did swallow up Vancouver on defense. So for what it's worth, it's not like they were allowing a ton, but they just didn't ever look comfortable. They really never got the offense flowing. I know they didn't allow a ton, but they really didn't generate a ton either.
Well, and that's what screws you over in the long run. I mean, you can hold them tight all day, but if you're not doing shit on your end, it's not going to matter. And to your point about Andrew Burnett, it makes you wonder, is he the right fit here? And when he was in Florida, he looked good because the Panthers were coming from behind and winning every game. But again, they were all come from behind wins.
I would say to have come from behind wins, you have to be losing the game. So
Exactly. And look, granted, I loved watching it, but Andrew Brunette was never the long-term fix for Florida. It was just they unexpectedly lost Joel Quenneville and they needed someone to fill the role immediately because the Panthers were on a tear at that time. So, and I'm not knocking Andrew Brunette, but I just don't think he's the right fit here. And granted, Nashville was in a position not long ago where they weren't going to make the playoffs, and then they absolutely rallied. But they need to keep that up in a series against the Vancouver Canucks right now. So if they don't get one at home, again, series over, no question.
all right, I dig it. How about the Oilers and the Kings? Oilers go out, absolutely tear LA to shreds in game 1. They lose game 2 in overtime. And I didn't make mention of this on the last show because everyone's like, well, now we're all knotted up. It's anybody's series. And while that was true, LA had a really, really good performance against the Oilers in game 2, and they still just barely won. I mean, they got an overtime winner, but that really could have gone Edmonton's way very easily. So now they go into LA and Edmonton walks away with it there. And I would assume this series is probably heading to a 5-game conclusion. I see the Oilers winning these next 2 and closing out. LA just can't keep up, man. Cam Talbot's simply not the goalie for the job.
Correct. And we talked about that before the playoffs even started, is LA's playoff success is going to largely depend on their goaltending because Cam Talbot's so inconsistent. It would be very strange to me if LA comes away with this series, and ultimately Edmonton's just going to have to shit the bed in order for that to happen. They got lucky in overtime. The Kings, they did, and they're lucky they have Anze Kopitar. But this is Edmonton's series all day, and there's not really a lot of input to give for this because it's such a mismatched series, I think, as far as the quality of the teams.
Well, yeah, the one win for LA is a 5-4 OT win, but the Oilers in their 2 wins have combined to win by a score of 13-5. So
yeah,
it's not particularly close. And again, the one game LA wins, they still give up 4 goals and squeak it out in overtime. I really haven't liked how they've looked. I know the Oilers are a significantly better team, but the only matchup I think that looks more lopsided than this one really is the Rangers and Capitals, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking for the Oilers to close this out, and I'm kind of with you. There's not much to say because it's been a pretty one-sided affair.
Right. And
so,
I think
go ahead.
I was just going to say, on Edmonton's side, Stuart Skinner's a big part of this as well. So
he needed to have that game in game 3 too. He needed that because I wasn't crazy about his performances in games 1 and 2. So for him to come back and really kind of shut it down here was good.
Absolutely.
Let's look at the Panthers and the Lightning. So the Panthers go up 3-0 in that series. They play game 4 yesterday, and Panthers didn't show up to play until the second period, which really cost them the game. I didn't hate their game in the second and third period, but it was obviously too late.
Yeah. And I mean, mostly the second period was all Panthers. No question. It was. Third period, it was kind of half and half. First period, Tampa came flying out of the gates, and it was noticeable right away. The Panthers looked lifeless that whole first period. Tampa's playing with absolute desperation. They know they got to get this win or else they're gone. And
that's a good team. It's a really good team.
It is, yeah. So, I mean, to be mad at it, again, officiating bad on both sides. And, the Panthers just can't stay out of the damn penalty box. And that's been something they've been struggling with for years. That's not a new thing. But ultimately, it does come back to bite him in the ass. Stammer gets 2 power play goals, I believe. Or no, one was Stammer, one was Hagel. I don't know. I'm not going to lie. I had a couple beers during that game yesterday. So, it was just a tough look, but I knew ultimately Tampa was going to come away with one. There was no way Florida was going in to Tampa and winning both games. I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's expected. I mean, just how dominant Florida's been, you were hoping they take both and close it out. But yeah, certainly don't see them losing all 3 of the possible remaining games in the series. So
no, I think they go home and get
foot on the gas. Yeah, they just got to keep their foot on the gas. Sometimes you lose to a good team, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Now, for the Leafs, It's anything but. I mean, they going back home to Toronto after squeaking out a win in Boston. And they just fall flat on their face completely in both games. We talked about game 3 the other night. And then game 4 happens yesterday, and it was never close. It was just never close. The play on the ice, the score. Thank God the Bruins stuck with Jeremy Swayman finally. Not that Linus Olmark couldn't have got it done, but for Christ's sakes, just stick with the hot hand. They do, and it pays dividends. Toronto just looks dead, man. When we do, we've talked about how we're going to do a long segment on Columbus this offseason because they're probably going to blow it up. If the Leafs go back into Boston on Monday or Tuesday now, if they go back into Boston Tuesday and lose and they're out in 5, boy, I think they're gonna have a bigger fire sale than Columbus, to be totally honest with you.
Well, and that's funny. The question we have ties into that series quite well, actually. But I'll hold off.
Let's give your piece on this, and then we'll do it since we're still on this.
Okay,
series.
That's fine.
So for the Bruins, I mean, there was a lot to like about this game. Again, I mentioned Jeremy Swayman looked really good for them. It was the right choice to go with him, but the Bruins just looked 4 steps ahead the entire game.
Correct, and when you're Toronto, I mean, this is one of the biggest, most attention-drawing series of the playoffs when it happens. And I'm a little surprised. Obviously, I'm a Bruins fan, but I was hoping for a far more intriguing series. It's been all Bruins, man, except that one game, but the Bruins are walking all over them. It's not as physical as it normally is. I mean, going both ways, I should say. It's weird. I mean, Marchand's dominating. Pasta hopefully can wake up a little bit. He's been kind of absent, I'll say, in a metaphorical sense on the ice this series. But Swayman's standing on his head. Marchand's making him look silly. I think Pat Maroon's been a good physical presence on the ice, but you can tell he's showing his age. That's for sure. So, dude, Toronto's got to figure it out. Nylander's back. Yay. Did nothing for them. I don't know what's going on with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner right now. That's a huge thing.
Oh, and then we'll get to the Leafs in a little bit because, boy, did they have a meltdown yesterday. But to your point about the physicality, I was actually going to say the inverse, that they've combined to average over 100 hits per game. So this has been, in my eyes, has been a very physical series. It's lacking the star power. I mean, the games have been either not close or even the games that were close, it's like it's so much more chippy than it is scoring. You're thinking of like highlight reel games, Pasternak hat tricks, Matthews hat tricks, great power play setups and feeds, and that's not really what this series has been. It's just been chip away at each other until somebody misses coverage.
Yeah.
So I think this series has been physical almost to a fault because it's sucked so much out of the offense of the series, and I just don't think we've had this level of star power on the march and putting on a show in game 3, and that's a good Pasternak pass in game 2. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know. This is not what I had hoped for in an original 6 matchup. I was hoping for some really fucking hectic, wild games, not whatever the hell this has been.
Yeah, like I said, it's been kind of a letdown as far as the grand scheme of the series goes. It's just been kind of underwhelming. That's the word I'm looking for.
The good thing about that, though, I mean, for the Bruins is regardless of how the games have gone, you're up 3-1 and you're going home. You got to be feeling pretty good about yourself. You look across to the other bench and you see the Leafs, who last night during the game, you see that you see Marner and Matthews arguing on the bench, and then they pan over to Nylander and he's saying, stop fucking crying, bro. I assume that was to Marner. They were sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
He says, stop fucking crying, bro. And they're talking about passing the puck and all this. So it's just blown up in their face. And I put it this way, I don't think they're going to even win another game, but for the Bruins, just win and get this over with, because if you lose a game to this carnival, you're going to have to go back to Toronto for a couple more days. And that's, dozens more hits that you don't need to take.
Right. I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting offseason for if you're Toronto this year.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
If you want, I can read off the question.
Yeah, I say let's hear the question then if it's
Okay.
related to this series.
Let me pull it back up because I wasn't prepped to read this until later in the show. All right. So the question comes to us from 6JJ476. I'm not going to read your entire email because we don't do that here.
Well, we'll just sell it later on to make money.
Yeah. So we'll just refer to him as, or her, I don't know, as JJ. As JJ. JJ says, disgruntled Leafs fan here. What happens with this team in the offseason? They look completely dead in this playoff series. The fans want to blame the refs, but ultimately it comes down to our coaching. What happens?
Well, what do you think, Andrew? I have quite a piece on this because I listen to so many hockey shows that are Toronto based. I feel like I hear about the Leafs more than I hear about the fucking Wild.
Bro, I say can Sheldon Keefe now make it interesting.
It's funny you say that. After game 3, I was like, I almost wonder if they should just fire the damn coach now and see if somebody new coming in could just turn this around real quick.
I would say, what do you have to lose?
That's the thing. I'm like, so 2 things to this, JJ. First is the coaching. I think Keefe's gone after this, and unless they come back, win the series, and win the conference, I don't see a world where Sheldon Keefe is the coach next season. So if you're a disgruntled fan, I think your frustrations with Sheldon Keefe probably match most of Leafs Nation, and I have to imagine he's gone after this year. For the team, dude, I'd blow it up, man. Look, from top to bottom, they're not constructed very well. They have really good forwards. They don't have great defense. They have Riley and 5 guys, and goaltending's just been ho-hum. They've not particularly drafted well in the goaltending department very often. And I mean, look at their goalies of the past few years. Their best goalie that they've had in the last decade plays for a different team, Freddie Anderson. And it is what it is. The Leafs, they'll probably, if I were them and if I were running this team, I'd ship the goalie out, look and see what's out there. But I'm moving 1 or 2 of the big 4. We've had this discussion before. You're not moving Matthews because that's your best guy. And if you can put him in a situation where he can truly succeed, and I don't know what that formula is, but we've seen his ceiling. So you don't let a guy like that go. You can't let Tavares go because his contract is untradeable because he's so overpaid and underperformed. Marner and Nylander, though, boy, do anything you can to get those shipped out and get some assets in return. I like both of those players. Clearly, with this team, Nylander's been in the Leafs organization for 10 years almost now. Clearly, this is not a fit. There's something missing somewhere. Marner's been in the organization for 9 years. They're really good players. You got to ship them out and bring in guys to help bolster the defense. I don't hate their depth players. I like a lot of some of their young guys too. I like Nyes. I like McMahon. There are some really good players there. But for Christ's sake, the big 4 and big 5, if you count Riley, I don't think you trade Riley either. He's a good defenseman, and don't trade your best defender either. But you got to move Marner. You got to move Nylander. You have to bring in some guys to breathe some life into this organization. They can't keep running it back with the same group that has shown only that they can't get it done.
Yeah, this is the last year you're going to see this core. That's my ultimate thing. These 4, in theory, on paper, looks great to have those 4 together. It's not happening, and it's been proven now the last several years that this just isn't it. I don't care who's behind the bench for them. Obviously, Sheldon Keefe is a problem and needs to go. I don't think he should be a coach in the NHL. That's just my personal belief. I think he's garbage, and I think he's toxic for the team. As far as your point with Marner and Nylander, the return you get for those guys can be absolutely astronomical. I mean, you could get multiple players for each of them. So, I mean, don't trade them away for draft picks necessarily. I mean, if you want to throw a draft pick into each trade, that's fine, but you got to get some kind of instant return for them as well. To your point about Matthews, unless the guy's requesting a trade out of town, you don't get rid of him. Why the hell do you get rid of your star player? And I talked to Brian about this before the playoffs even started, because Brian and I talk hockey a lot on the phone too. Part of my belief is that, if the Leafs are out round 1 this year, does he ask to leave town? I'd like to think no, because I think if you get the right coaching staff and you get the right chemistry brewing, this is a team that can make a deep playoff run, but they've been so poorly coached. And as you could, as Brian said, you saw it on the bench. The chemistry is just in shambles right now. You got guys on the team arguing with each other. That is the last thing you want to see. So as far as this season goes, this postseason, the Leafs are all but done unless a miracle happens. But yeah, not a good look. And like you said, Tavares is so disgustingly overpaid right now that they're stuck holding on to him because nobody's picking up that contract.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I actually like the Matthews, Bertuzzi, and Domi line. I think they play really well together for the most part. It hasn't really worked in the playoffs, but listen, they have some pieces there that they could do some damage with. But you got to move Martin or you got to move Nylander. Those guys both make a ton of money. You could bring in just average defenders, $4 or $5 million guys, and still have room left over to go get a pretty high tier winger as well, a guy that can play on the power play. Like I would love to see, this is just an example. I'd love to see like a David Perron there. Can you have David Perron on the second line with a guy like Nice, who's already a chippy motherfucker, and Tavares, who's a really high skill player when he's playing at his best? That's the kind of line I'd like to see. And Perron can be a pain in the ass to play against. That's the kind of guy I want to see there. He's not going to command a huge salary, but he's going to come in and he'd play really well. Whereas Nylander is a really high skill player, doesn't really offer much in the physical department, and Marner's kind of the same way, but they both make so much fucking money. There's a ton of teams that would like to have those players even at that salary. But the bottom line is it just doesn't work in Toronto. It has not worked. And for the Leafs fans, I'm glad Dubas is gone because Dubas was so fucking obsessed with keeping these guys together. He just couldn't help himself. I think Treliving gave it 1 year as a GM, probably just to see how it's going to go. Would not at all be surprised to see him clean house in the offseason.
Yeah, the Shanna plan is not working, and it's proven to be.
Sorry, I buried the lead. Yeah, if I'm MLSE, I'm firing Brandon Shanahan for sure. What the fuck have you done for this team the last 12 years or whatever he's been involved with it? He brought in Babcock. They thought they had this big plan in place. They go out, they win the draft lottery, they get Matthews, they have a good first couple of years. But as soon as you see it's not working, and I know the guys were still young at the time, but you have to make bigger changes. I really would never cared about them bringing in Tavares. I thought it was a good weapon for them, but at the price and the role he plays, there's a lot of other guys I would have gone after before him. And it's tough to say because when they sign him, everyone's like, oh my God, Tavares is a Leaf. Like, holy shit, he's good. And he is, but it's not the style. You can't keep adding, you can't ice 6 of the same kind of fucking player and expect to win all the time. It just doesn't happen. So
I have one more thing to say that's Leafs related, and then we can move on if you'd like. But I need to get this out there because this playoff series has really given me the opportunity to prove this point. And it's going to shock some people because I'm a diehard Bruins fan and I notoriously despise the Leafs. But I have to, one, give credit to Toronto Maple Leafs fans after all these years. They are one of the most devoted fan bases in the game of hockey. And that's year after year of being let down and just having their hearts ripped out. They still come back confident every year. Everybody says Leafs fans are delusional. They're just devoted. And
they just want to see their team win.
Say that again?
I said they just want to see their team win.
Yeah, they just want to see their team win, like the rest of us do. So now sometimes they're delusional. A lot of times it's blaming the officiating, but the front office just sticks it to them every year, and they keep coming back and coming back, dude. These fans deserve far more than what they're getting out of this team right now. And every year they just keep kicking the fan base in the balls every year. And it's aggravating as me. Yeah, I'm a Bruins fan, but as a hockey fan, it's just disrespectful to your fans. When you have a fan base that's that devoted, you sell out every game all season long. That team could lose 82 games in a row and there's asses in seats every night, I guarantee it. So if nothing else, do it for your fans. That's what pisses me off. End rant.
All right, I like it. All right, let's next here. Hi, you hear me now? It's like a Verizon commercial.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? No, I just said, because I saw your picture was gone.
Yeah, no, I took it off. We're still having technical difficulties. One day we might have to do a synopsis of the internet that's trying to tank our show. All right. So we'll touch on the Rangers and Capitals really quick. This has gone exactly how most people expected. Yes. I thought maybe Charlie Lindgren could steal the Caps a game. That does not look like it's going to happen.
No, not at all. I didn't think he was going to steal them a game at all. I said it on the Ben Polacco episode, and I'm still standing by it now. I'll be mind blown if the Rangers don't sweep today. There's no reason for them not to. The Caps only made it because of the Wings tanking right at the end. They barely squeaked in. They're just not performing to standard. Ovi's not what he used to be. You don't have Kuznetsov. You don't have Backstrom anymore. It's just not the same Caps team that won the Cup. What was that, 6 years ago now? So to have obviously the Caps fans go in having high expectations, and I should say high hopes for their team, but there's nothing here in this series. It's essentially a first round bye for the Rangers, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's very much felt like that. They've had no gas in the tank, so we'll see. But yeah, that series probably wraps up tonight. You know, for Caps fans, it's nice you got to squeak into the playoffs. You know, it would have been nice to see him win a game, but I don't see it happening. But that's okay, because now everybody, listen, Ovi's got his cup. Everybody's right behind him, watching him chase this Gretzky goals record. So it's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. You have entertainment for Caps fans for the next year or two still. Regardless of if you make the playoffs or not, this record chase is still going to be fun to watch, and I'm looking forward to it.
Now, what happens 3 to 5 years from now, I am terrified for Caps fans for, because it does not look promising. But that's a bridge we'll cross later on. Let's let them enjoy this now. That, like I said, they've got their cup with Ovi. He's chasing down the record. Let's just let them have their moment here, because, yeah, like I said, in a few years, I don't think it'll be very pleasant over there. All right.
Yes.
Final series. Before we do the final series, actually, let's take a moment to mention our sponsors, Andrew.
Let us do that. As always, Fresh Ice is brought to you by our friends over at Xenopucks. Xenopucks making a top-tier, high-quality off-ice practice puck designed for use on virtually any off-ice surface, whether it be the floors in your house, regardless of hardwood, carpet, or tile. You can use it outdoors, concrete, asphalt, dirt, turf. It works on all of them. It glides like a hot knife through butter. We always say, don't use this for a game because it is not made out of rubber. This thing is solid. However, it is the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck, so it's perfect. It's still got that real feel when it's on the end of your stick. If you're using something else and you're looking for a better off-ice practice puck, just stop looking, because this is it. It doesn't get better than this. So if you're watching this and this intrigues you, head over to xenopucks.com right now. Pick up one of these pucks. Also, make sure to check out their merch selection while you're there. And then head over to Instagram at Xenopucks and give them a follow as well. And tell them Andy and Brian from Fresh Ice sent you.
That's right. After you're done doing that, you got your Xeno puck coming in the mail. You're like, all right, well, now I'll have something to practice in the driveway with. But at what cost to your hockey stick? Why ruin a perfectly good and probably expensive hockey stick when you don't have to? Our friends at the Hockey Wraparound have developed a perfect hockey blade wraparound. It's going to go right around the bottom of the blade and the toe of your stick, and it'll protect it when you're practicing off ice, so you won't hack up the bottom of the stick. You're not going to ruin your perfect tape job that you spent 5 minutes on. It's going to be a perfect fit for you. Go to hockeywraparound.com. Go check out the blade wraparounds, but get yourself some other gear too. You can get yourself an equipment drying rack, pick up some merch, and maybe even get some tape for your stick too, in case you've already ruined your tape job playing in the driveway without one of their products. So go to hockeywraparound.com/fresh ice. Use the code FreshIcePod to get yourself 15% off your order.
I like it a lot. Great stuff, man.
All right. Final series. The Islanders and the Hurricanes. I was watching this yesterday. I was just hoping the Hurricanes were going to put it away once it went to OT. I'm like, we all know where this is headed.
Yeah.
Let's just get it over with. But for the Canes, they get a chance to go close out the series at home. Again, sweeps at this time of year, you're playing usually teams that are all pretty good. Asking a team to win 4 straight against the same team is no easy task. I mean, we just talked about the Bruins and Leafs. The Leafs have not showed up for the series and still pulled out a win. So for the Islanders, who haven't played awful, it's not at all surprising to me that they squeaked out a win. But yeah, so good on them. But I mean, I assume your thoughts are kind of in the same boat. This still looks like Carolina's series to take.
Yeah, there's no reason really to elaborate on this too much. This is Carolina's series. It's in the bag. You know, they were able to squeak one out in overtime, and I was just honestly, when I was watching it and it was getting ready to go in overtime, I was like, all right, at this point, I don't care who scores. Let's just do it. I got to watch the Panthers, which I don't know why
Didn't
I was
go
in a
well.
rush to watch. Yeah. But ultimately, this is still Carolina's series. Good on New York for getting one at home so you're not getting swept in front of your own fans. But this is going back to Carolina now. This is it. I mean, I think all these game fives where the teams are up 3-1 are ending in game 5.
Fair enough. We'll see how it goes. Before we go ourselves, Andrew, a couple things. I know you wanted to mention the Warrior for Life.
Absolutely. Yes. So if you remember a couple episodes ago and you tuned in, we did our first live show and we had Bob Pizzini on the show, which was a great episode for us. We had so much fun doing it. But Bob talked about the fund that he's an ambassador for, sorry. And that is the Warrior for Life Fund. And Bob and myself, both being veterans, this is a huge thing because this organization goes out of their way to help transitioning military personnel and their families through hockey. And what that does is they do all kinds of fundraisers and special events, and they do games with the Boston Bruins Alumni Association. They have their own hockey team, and they go all over and play different games, and the team's loaded with veterans who are transitioning back into the civilian life or readjusting from deployments. And it's there. They offer programs for their families because without going into too much detail on the military side of things, there's a lot that goes into transitioning when you get out of the military or when you come back from a deployment. It's very mentally demanding on both the service member and their family. It's an adjustment for everybody because you get used to a certain way of living, and it's hard to break that habit. It's like any other habit. It's hard to break. And that's what Warrior for Life Fund is here for, is to make that transition a little smoother by doing it through the game of hockey. You still get that camaraderie. They make it fun. So you're not sitting in a room with a therapist, just living through stressful memories. This is an easier way to cope with that. Someone will always have your back. And they even do things like adaptive sports, such as sled hockey, which is a big thing because, you know, a lot of veterans come back with disabilities. And that's a really good way to blow off some steam. So head over to the warriorforlifefund.org, make a donation, please. You're helping America's veterans and you're helping grow the game of hockey.
I dig it. So to wrap the show, Andrew, now before we go, we're making an announcement here. Due to a couple things, but the largest being internet problems and the fact that we still both work full-time jobs during the week, we're going to be rolling the show back to just the one a week on Sunday. There's a couple other factors that play into it as well, but also given this time of year anyways, there's going to be a lot less to talk about. It's going to be slow news days. There's going to be way less games, but for the ease and for the purposes of this show, we're going to be going just back to Sundays for the time being.
Right. And I want to just point out, if something like major happens where we need to hop on and talk about it, we will.
Yeah.
But as Brian said, you know, this is something Brian and I do for fun. It gained a lot more traction than we thought it was going to, but we both do work full-time jobs. So we're just going to dial it back a little bit and just do our weekly Sunday shows for now.
Yeah, that was pretty well put. If something major happens, we'll come on and talk about it. It might not be in the whole grand podcast form. It might just be us, video, screen recording us doing a FaceTime call to talk about something or whatever
Right.
it may be. But as far as the podcast goes, we'll still post every Sunday. Now, again, in the interest of the sport itself, there are 4 game 7s that are scheduled for next Sunday. If it gets to that point, if the series all don't wrap up by next Sunday, we may do a show next Monday instead, as that way we can better preview round 2.
Right.
But as far as the rest of the show is concerned, please still send us your questions. We will continue to read them on Sunday episodes. We're going to pick back up with Tough Looks of the Week again starting next Sunday. Obviously, we didn't do anything this Sunday because we had just done a show on
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, I had a brain fart for a second. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. Again, there's no issues there, but okay, there you go. And we're back. But yeah, we'll have everything taken care of. As far as we'll probably have more to talk about on each show again because we're going to be waiting an entire week at a time. But it is what it is. Yeah, it'll go better. And again, as we go further into the postseason and we have less games every day and there's less news, it'll probably be more convenient. Otherwise, you'll have like 2 5-minute shows a week or 2 10-minute shows a week, and that's not what we want to do.
Well, I think it's also important to add that it makes it easy on you as our listeners / viewers to where you won't fall behind on episodes. You won't feel pressured to have to try and squeeze in 2 episodes a week right now. You can just watch the one at your leisure. I think it makes it easier on you guys as well. And we want this to be a good environment for not just us, but for you guys as well, because without you, the show doesn't exist. So,
yeah. Absolutely. So most importantly, though, make sure you're getting those questions in. Contact at freshicepodcast.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just post them straight up in the comments. If you have questions, you can tweet them at me as well. I am on Twitter at Brian Fresh Ice. I'm also on Instagram at Brian Fresh Ice. So send me a DM or tweet at me or do whatever you need. Leave something on the podcast, one of the social media feeds. We are on Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, as well as Facebook. So follow us on there. Send us messages with any questions you may have, or you can just email the show directly. Whatever floats your boat will float ours as well.
Absolutely. And remember, Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast to stay up to date on what's happening with the show and anything that we might have to cover during the week.
That's right. Yeah, that's probably something else we should have emphasized on, is that likely if we do any massive news updates, they may just go on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But they right. Probably is, if you're an audio listener, you're probably not going to get those on the audio platforms. We may post some reels or shorts on YouTube, but any small updates that we're going to post to media will probably be on Facebook or Instagram. So definitely follow there.
Yep. And with that being said, I think we're just about done here, sir.
We are. I don't have anything else on the show plan. We tackled everything we needed to. So thanks again, JJ, for sending in the question. Again, guys, make sure you get those in. And next time we talk to you, the first round of the playoffs will be over. So that'll be fun. We'll see how horrible our brackets are. We'll go back over those, and then we'll set you guys up for round 2.
Sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this round. We will see you guys next week. Take care and comb your hair.